right. Any questions before we pick up in chapter 14 where we left off? Okay. The point that we left off.
I was just wondering, as far as the homework, there's a lot of questions that I don't know. I guess we probably will cover it today, though. Actually, so
For
chapter 14.
the Connect
Yes.
homework.
So
When
like
did
all
I
the
have
cranial,
it due?
I think it was due by today, like last night at midnight.
It was, but then you moved it.
Oh, no.
I did move. Okay.
Well, then I guess I'm ahead. Never mind.
No, that's all right. That's okay, because most of the time I'm behind. So that's good. All right. So we're going to pick up at the point we left off, and we of course are talking about this lovely organ right here, which is still continuing with our nervous system. And when we left off on Thursday, we left off at the point of the hypothalamus, which we are, of course, going to come back to. So just a real quick recap. The hypothalamus is this little area that looks like it has a W to it, okay? And we were talking about those nuclei, and anytime that term comes up, that's letting us know it's an area of dense nerve cell bodies, okay? So whenever we hear that term, that's what nucleus or nuclei is trying to tell us in this nervous system. So we noted that there are quite a few nuclei in the hypothalamus that pretty much control almost all aspects of the body. It's just amazing to me. But like I said, we'll be coming back to this when we get to the endocrine system. So let's move to our next part. The next part of the brain that we're going to talk about is our cerebrum. This portion that we tend to think about as the brain, okay? But hopefully you've now learned there's a lot of other things associated with the brain. So our cerebrum, it is the largest part of the brain. Here's the important term: voluntary. This is the seat of voluntary motor control and mental processes. What is that?
So you're thinking about making a decision.
When you are consciously thinking about doing something. Those landmarks in the anatomy, the two hemispheres, the left and the right. We've got the longitudinal fissure. We're going to see what we mentioned earlier, the corpus callosum, this area that looks like a C, and it's that area of these really dense fibers, okay? Those axons that are present. The gyri, the sulci, the spaghetti, okay? The big noodles, the little sulci that exist in between them. Now, something that I did not point out yet, because I wanted to wait until we got to this point. Our hemispheres, they're separated by lobes: frontal lobe, temporal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, okay? We probably should have all gotten brains again. But one of the things that you find on this structure as landmarks, if you begin to look at these foldings and these sulci that exist, it looks like there's a very prominent sulci that runs all the way around. Can everybody kind of see that? It looks like it just does this number all the way across, from one side to the next, okay? That is giving us a representation of a marking for our frontal lobe going to our parietal lobe. And then you'll see a very prominent one on each side, separating and showing temporal lobe. And as you begin to look back between this very prominent one, we got our parietal, not so much a huge definition, but just this back portion is our occipital lobe. Each one of these you can relate to a special sense, okay, which we'll learn in, I think it's the next chapter, I can't remember, the special senses. So they have some prominent gyri also and prominent sulci. If we were to look at the lobes, frontal, parietal, occipital, temporal, then if you could pull back some of these gyri, we have the insula. Y'all ever heard of that one? Probably because it's not one that is that landmark on the outer portions that we can see. This one is lying underneath. It's for taste, pain, viscera, sensation, the organs, consciousness, emotion, empathy, cardiovascular homeostasis. But look at these other lobes that we get. Occipital, strictly for vision. As you get into learning about the special senses, vision, I would probably say that of the special senses that we have, vision is probably the most complex. And I don't know about you guys, man, I can't get my frog gone this morning. Don't know about you guys, it's the one I would not want to lose, okay? I'm watching my mother now going through losing her vision. It's just one I don't think I'd want to lose. But if we look at what else happens with the lobes, temporal, we definitely associate with hearing, okay? But have you ever noticed that it has these other ones that it might be associated with? Did you ever know that it was part of like smell, emotion, learning, language? All these others. Under parietal, we associate with that special sense of taste, but we also have some somatic, some other sensory, a little bit of visual, spatial. Is everybody familiar with that? That's one of those things that these generalized tests kind of test us for, our spatial ability. Yeah, okay. Frontal, frontal lobe gets very interesting. Our frontal lobe, abstract thought. Okay, not quite sure what that might be. Explicit memory. I don't know what that might be. Mood. I just don't think I can do this anymore. What? Okay, it's just like mood, but trust me, there's some other parts of the brain that come into play on that, and it's really interesting. Motivation. Oh, no, today's not the day. Tomorrow's not looking pretty good either. Just saying. Foresight and planning. That doesn't mean just the plan to get up and move somewhere. It's as simple as thinking about the fact of picking up a pen or a pencil and writing. So it's a planning for a lot of what you're going to do with your skeletal muscles from the frontal lobe. Emotional control in a proper situation. How do you know which emotion to use? This is the area that it comes from. Voluntary motor control, social judgment, speech production. The frontal lobe is busy, okay, with a lot of interesting things that are going on. So in this wonderful part of the brain, we're going to see that we have the white matter, the gray matter. But this time, in the white matter, which, if you remember, these are tracts, T-R-A-C-Ts, okay? So these are axons. If you look at this brain, not only do I have two halves, a left and a right, it has to be able to communicate front to back, lobe to lobe, to other areas of the brain, all right? So the white matter, what we end up having with the tracts, we get a projection tract, commissural tract, and an association tract. When we say projection, this means project to somewhere. The LCD projects to the screen, okay? So these tracts will go between higher and lower brain, giving me a connection to other parts, and spinal cord centers. This is for this huge area of the brain to communicate somewhere else. So, I get to carry information from this large area to somewhere else in my body. If I'm thinking about writing notes on a piece of paper, this is going to help. A commissural tract. This is the commissure, this huge area. Lets me go from one hemisphere to the next. So I get to go from left to right. So if my left side of the brain needs to associate with the right side of the brain, this is how it will do it. Yes, might think you're left-brained or right-brained, okay? And that is true. But they still need to communicate to each other. The association tracts, this will connect on the same hemisphere from one region to another. So we could have long or short fibers depending upon where information might need to go. Perception. Perception's always better than reality, right? Yeah. Well, I'm going to go out shopping and everything's going to be on sale and it's going to be a wonderful day. Reality, I go shopping, not a sale in sight, and I'm like, I can't buy anything. So there's my emotions coming into play. Okay? So they're talking to other areas of the brain. Good example. When we look at a rose, how do we know it's a rose? Do we Picture it,